Hi. Today we had our Scaling AI Governance webinar, and there were more questions and comments than what we could address given the time. So that's why I would like to go over the different questions that were asked by the audience and also respond to a few comments in the chat. So first of all, there were a number of questions related to how to implement AI governance when you are a small organization. As Alexander already mentioned, the most important in that case is that you will probably have a few AI use cases, and you need to, first of all, classify them, meaning making sure they are either prohibited, in which case you actually cannot use them in the EU, if they are high risk or non-high risk. And secondly, you need to determine whether you are a deployer, making available the AI use case, or also a provider, which is creating the AI system. Depending on the categorization, you will have different requirements. Now, two important aspects here are, first of all, that you need to properly document. Documentation here means that you make sure that it's clear for what you have designed this AI system, what is the context in which it can be used, and that you have identified what are risks that are important in that specific context. If you create that type of documentation, then you are already quite far towards compliance. Moreover, this is an interesting exercise in itself, because as you grow, as new people start working in your organization, you will be able to use that documentation to onboard them quicker. There were a few more comments in the chat as well related to financial regulation. So there was one person who pointed out that model regulation in the financial sector is quite different because it is focused on quantitative outcomes and decision-making processes, while the AI Act is a rather general legislation with also huge fines and a fairly bureaucratic approach. So this was the statement from this person, which I kind of disagree a little bit about with. Reason is that both financial regulation around model risk management as well as the AI Act focus on mitigating the risk related to using mathematical models. So if you want to address that risks, then there is a few important aspects. First of all, you need to make sure you have some governance in place. You will also need to be able to quantitatively test if certain models are performing well or not. And you will need to be able to deal with, say, incidents or surprising outcomes that always may happen. Both financial regulation and AI Act are focusing on mitigating that risk. Where they differ is that the AI Act is most of the time addressed from a compliance angle, meaning that for every use case in your organization, you are gathering your obligations or requirements, and you translate those requirements, or you put next to those requirements a number of controls which verify that you actually satisfy the requirements. And the controls are a way to prove to the regulator that you are aligned. If, on the other hand, you look at model risk management in the financial sector, then you will see that banks focus the focus of banks is to work on the models. The models are the primary assets that is managed, and you set up a process such that you become compliant if you walk the model through its life cycle according to that process. The reason why the financial industry has evolved towards that approach is, in my opinion, primarily because in finance, this type of regulation has been in place for a very long time. And moreover, the number of models or the number of use cases that the bank has to manage is very large, which means that the pure compliance approach does not scale. Good. Then there was a question related to the repository or the inventory of AI models. So here the question was, do you see specific requirements to a repository of AI models other than the obvious classification requirements? Well, I would say that actually the important difference is that when you manage AI risk, you actually have to look at the AI use case. So a use case, you can think of it almost as an model, an AI model, an algorithm such as ChatGPT, for instance, that you use in a specific context. The context is extremely important because it determines the risks of the AI use case itself. I give an example. Suppose I use ChatGPT to plan my next holiday abroad and find a good destination, then that clearly is not going to have a lot of risks associated to it. On the other hand, if I'm using ChatGPT to determine a medical diagnosis based on symptoms, and I'm working as a doctor and medical doctor, for instance, then clearly that use case is going to be high risk. So as you can see, it's the same underlying model, ChatGPT, but the use case determines, or the context determines, what the risks are. Therefore, your inventory of AI use cases has to take that into account. That's extremely important. Then there was a comment related to AI literacy, as it helps removing design risks and biased design in the early stages of the life cycle of the AI use case. Well, that's definitely very true. Simultaneously, I would say that AI literacy can be looked at a bit more generally. First of all, when it's not only the people who are building the AI cases that need to be AI literate, it's definitely as well the people who are using the AI systems who need to understand what can be the limitations of a given AI system. And users also need to be critical about the outputs of these AI systems, because as we all know, if you are using ChatGPT, it might hallucinate, as just one example. Simultaneously, I would say that I would actually take this literacy approach even a bit broader. If we want to effectively manage AI risk, it not only means that people have to be comfortable using AI and understand what are the risks and limitations, but also that people who are building AI start looking at it from a wider angle to also understand the business context and the regulatory context as well. Only then you will be able to build efficient multidisciplinary teams who can tackle the different challenges that come with an AI governance implementation. And then there was a final interesting question related to how to communicate about AI risks. So the question was, how do you draw attention to AI risks without simultaneously triggering a sense of powerlessness and defensiveness regarding AI and its implementation? Well, that actually goes back to the AI literacy as well, I would say. So obviously, if you are introducing AI, you have a lot of good reasons to do so. There is efficiency gains. It's more working towards the future of software as well. It helps removing some of the more boring tasks or time-consuming tasks. So there is lots of benefits here for the organization. However, introducing such AI systems without also educating the people on the risks that are associated to it is obviously a quite dangerous approach, I would say. It's since AI systems, if you're using AI systems, you always need to balance somehow the risks versus rewards, such as anything in life. If you are ready to automate really everything of your decision-making process, then it means that you put a lot of faith in the outcome of the AI system, which also means that you then accept the fact that that AI system might be wrong. So that's why a good introduction of an AI system means that you clarify the added value, but you also highlight what are the risks, and you make this trade-off explicit. You make sure that everyone understands that given the amount of risk that the organization is ready to accept, the best is to introduce this system with a number of guardrails. If you do this, you can do this actually in a gradual fashion as well, where you maybe first roll out AI use cases in low-risk environments, and then you gradually start introducing other use cases which have a bit more risk associated to it, and therefore also require a bit more understanding of the user on the limitations. Okay, I hope that answered some of the questions. If you have any more, then please let us know. Thank you.